It wasn't supposed to be like this. We were lied to by Vault-Tec. Chad, everywhere I went. And he wasn't alone.
Ken, first of all, welcome to the Fallout Creator Series. I'm so pleased to have you here, and welcome to episode 2. You are highly regarded and a beloved member of the Fallout community, a Fallout guru, if you will. When I first encountered you and your content, I felt at ease, and not many creators have that ability to make people feel welcome instantly. These were just some of the reasons why I wanted to meet you, so thank you for joining me today. I hope you will enjoy this episode with Kenneth Vigue from Chad, a Fallout 76 podcast. He's also the creator of the Fallout for Hope charity stream, and also creates many more videos on YouTube, but primarily is a Twitch streamer and a very, very popular podcaster. So on with the video. I hope you enjoy. Happy 2-year anniversary on Chad, a Fallout 76 podcast. The first episode premiered in May 2019, I believe.
May the 12th of 2019, yeah.
Yeah, I did my research. Can you tell us the origin story behind this podcast coming to fruition?
How far down the rabbit hole do you want to go, Alice? Well, buckle up, because it goes all the way back to when I was in elementary school. My grandmother used to take me to the library in town. In the town that I grew up in, Newburyport, Massachusetts, was like this very, it's ironic because Lovecraft actually put the city of Innsmouth is based on Newburyport. So it was this classic brick front seaside town, covered in fog in like the spring and summer seasons. And the library itself was this old Federalist mansion that had been turned into a library. And at that point in time, they hadn't really updated or modernized it. So it still was very dark in there with dramatic lighting and wainscoting and this huge staircase and stained glass windows. And the whole place was really magical when you were a kid. I wandered up to where the adult books were upstairs and just kind of wandered around in there. And the place was like open amphitheater style with 3 levels of books around the perimeter on high library cases. So you had to take these spiral staircases up to get to them. And I went to like the darkest possible corner up there to the very top level. And in it, like an old, forgotten, very dusty room, was just floor to ceiling vinyl records. And I started pawing through all of these old vinyl records, and it was a lot of like books on vinyl, and found it was a striking, solid black cover with a skull on it, and it said "Lights Out, Murder Castle." So I checked it out and brought it home and listened, and it was this classic radio drama written by Arch Oboler, who's since become a real hero of mine, who was an icon before the era of television during the golden age of radio, who created the most compelling radio dramas imaginable, and who many of our common horror tropes actually began with his writing. That particular story was an interpretation of H.H. Holmes's Murder Castle. So it was this gruesome story with some really intense sound effects of the serial killer inviting women to his home, stealing their money, and then putting them in rooms that are just death rooms with like all of these nefarious traps. And I actually got a master and then digitally remastered it and put it up on YouTube this past October for Halloween. And I put it out there. It's the cleanest possible recording of it that I've been able to find.
Yes, what is it?
Is Mr. Stewart in?
Oh, yes, indeed. Won't you come in? I'm Mr. Stewart.
When I was in the Boy Scouts, I used to write horror stories that I'd tell around the campfire. So that like stories like our Sickle Man saga come very much from that horror story genre told by the campfire.
Oh wow, so they're inspired by your childhood.
The kind of stories that we tell around the campfire Boy Scouts would always be like serial killers in the woods and that kind of thing. People escaped from the asylum until Fallout 76 happened. And I think part of it was 76 is very cathartic in a way, in that without NPCs, your mind just kind of drifts. And you have this sandbox. It's a really intriguing world with an interesting story, and stories just kind of form themselves in that vacuum in a way that they didn't when I played previous Fallout games. But one night we were wandering through the high school in Morgantown, and we started reminiscing about high school and people that we knew. And I remember this bully named Chad, and then everyone else chimed in and be like, yeah, I had a bully in my school named Chad too. So we realized we all knew a Chad. And when we started talking about the Chad trope, the meme, it exists for a very good reason. I started to think about what would happen if, you deal with this person, and then, your reclamation day comes, you had this type of person in the vault, and you step out into the world and you can't quite get away from this person. Like, there are only so many people in that world. So you constantly keep running into each other. So in a way, a high school experience never ends. And that's kind of where our conflict begins. In that Simon hates this person so much to the point he can't stand him.
On the topic of the Chad Fallout 76 podcast, what with it ranking in the top 100 global podcasts and featuring the legendary Pete Hines and a multitude of Fallout creators such as Oxhorn, Juicehead, and my personal favourite, Kev Jewett, did you ever see the podcast getting to where it is today and being as big as it is?
I did, absolutely. Yeah, I knew the whole time it was going to be huge. I had no question at all. I knew I was headed for Vegas in the big city lights. And like, here's the sad thing. I'm such a broken individual. It's never quite enough. And that comes from a deep place of not being satisfied with your work or what you're doing, or second guessing yourself and all of that kind of thing. To me, to this day, particularly because I gave up writing for so long, it baffles me that people authentically enjoy these stories and connect with these characters. Like, it's all very surreal. And I'm sure that's probably very sad, but it's just the way I feel. There's only one story that I've ever written for this show that I've actually felt confident in is the best writing that I've ever done. And that was actually our Halloween special.
It is a story that explores the fathomless depths of the human heart, of the transition from wide-eyed and innocent youth to the burdened longing and regret of adulthood. On those Halloweens when my feet didn't touch the floor, I would sit with my grandmother and munch away on my gotten gains from a pillowcase, and we'd watch them both. On Halloweens and on many days, I miss her deeply. This story is a love letter to both the costumed child inside all of us, still gleefully skipping into the darkness, and to my grandmother, who whispers now only on the autumn wind, reminding me to never let go of that little boy's hand. The cast of Chad, a Fallout 76 story proudly present Halloween in October Country.
That was Halloween in October Country, which was a retelling and kind of a spin on Ray Bradbury, who's one of my favorite authors. Something Wicked This Way Comes is just an amazing coming-of-age story. And also a really excellent movie that was done by the Disney Channel back in the day when they used to do some really creepy, weird kids movies. That's a really great one because it deals with death and loss and monsters and choices made by people. It's kind of the inner secrets of the human heart is some of the best writing that I've ever done. And even now I'll go back and re-listen to that one in a way that I don't really the other stories.
Sometimes we just make that one thing that just kind of really does something different. It makes you feel different and proud.
Yeah, and it's not even, that one isn't our most popular episode, but it is my favorite episode. When I wanted to write and actually have it go somewhere, that is the kind of story I wanted to tell. The dark thing about content creation, the thing that looks great from the outside, but people don't see, much less talk about, is you are in competition with nobody else other than yourself. If you delude yourself into thinking that other people are your competition, you're already sabotaging yourself, partly because of how branding works and why we watch the content creators that we do. You could have two content creators doing the same kind of thing, the same kind of stream, and it wouldn't be the same experience because people are tuning in not for, you shooting Thomas the Tank Engine missiles. They're tuning in for you. You are the content. And that can't be replicated. The tricky part of that, though, is when you do something that is successful, you immediately try and outdo yourself. And for me, that is, in addition to me having to be more public and out in the open and accessible and liked and hated, judged or misunderstood, and all of the kind of things that come with something that you do that's popular and you being the face of it, you get into this cycle where it becomes hard to try and outdo yourself, particularly when you do something that was so good. It's like the day after Christmas and you're like, great, now what the actual fuck do I do with myself?
Got everything there and you don't know what to do with it because you've already laid it on the table. Like, what, do you put it back on the table? Like, how do you redo what's already...
Like, an example of that is Bethesda Game Days. So I'll tell you how that came about. What I didn't know, and when you mentioned earlier that Bethesda pays attention to the community in a way that the community doesn't realize, they very much do. I only found out later that a lot of the developers had been listening to the podcast and liked the podcast. I'd had
Wow, what a compliment to you. I mean, how did that make you feel to hear that they're listening to your podcast? Because that's pretty huge.
I'd had one article come out that was about the podcast that got in some press, and that was for Power Up Gaming, who did the first kind of interview at a press level of it, which was kind of cool. But then Forbes magazine and Alex Kane reached out to me to do an in-depth article. To have an article in Forbes was a big deal for me. Alex Kane was covering Bethesda back then for Forbes magazine and did an article on me. And that blew up. And when it did, some of the Bethesda employees started following me on Twitter. So I was quietly crapping my pants. So just after Christmas, someone from Bethesda reached out to me out of the blue, which was just kind of baffling, with a what if scenario. And I'd never heard of Bethesda Game Days. I mean, I've never been to gaming conventions, much less been involved in gaming communities at all before this. I just kind of played video games at home by myself. And they said, well, how would you feel about doing something for Bethesda Game Days on stage? Is it possible to do the podcast as a live show? And I said, sure. Yep. Because of course I said yes, but then I had to think, for one thing, the cast and I had never met. I mean, we're literally scattered all over the United States, Canada, and England. So we hadn't met. We were all NDA'd, so we had to talk about everything covertly. Couldn't even tell family, but we're trying to arrange travel and plans, and the whole while I'm trying to figure out how to take our podcast and be able to do it on a stage.
Yeah, how does that translate onto a stage?
The only thing that made sense, so thankfully I had playwriting to fall back on. So I had to think of how can I take a radio drama and reinterpret it into more of a stage play. So I started there, and then it became a little easier. And it worked well because everything in season 1 is about all of the awful choices that both Simon and Chad made and the consequences of their actions. So it would be perfect timing for us to be put on trial on stage at Bethesda Game Days for crimes against Appalachia. So it worked out well because it wouldn't require a lot of moving around. It's just kind of it's a courtroom drama kind of scenario, which is a classic playwriting trope. So that worked out well. And then, we could incorporate minimal sound effects. I could incorporate orchestration and video clips and things like that. So we pulled all of that together. And then the same person I talked to at Bethesda said, well, is there any way we could get Pete involved in this? And I thought, I have the perfect role for him.
So they asked you Pete could be involved in it. Is that how your relationship began?
It was more like they suggested, well, what would you do if, and then we're going to go pitch it to him. And part of it, they got him his outfit. He had an actual judge's outfit with the frilly, lace. So they got him props and everything. But I said, yeah, I have the perfect character for him. So he will be the judge, which would be incredibly ironic. Like when in the script, and I put in all kinds of inside jokes because one of the things that happened to him is playing in Public Worlds, his camp was nuked. So I put that in the script, where one of the reasons that he becomes a judge is because, he just was living his life out on his farm, and the players nuked his farm and killed his cow, Muma. So he becomes this vengeful character, doling out justice with swinging his banhammer. So the whole thing worked really well because we play with the meta so much. The meta commentary in our stories, I think, is part of that secret sauce. So it was also fun, I think, for Pete, because he gets to really go out of character in a way that, being the face of PR at Bethesda, I don't think he gets a chance to just do something completely ridiculous. And partly because my mom was watching, I dumbed down the script a little bit and didn't add as many obscenities as is normally in our script. And when we were doing in dress rehearsal, Pete's like, do you mind if I swear? Like, I feel like my character would just say like shit right here. I was like, okay, Pete Hines, if you want to swear, I'm not going to tell you no. You do whatever you want. Yeah, so that was awesome. I was incredibly nervous. I had at least 10 or 12 cocktails before going on stage.
See, that would knock me to the floor, but yeah.
I was burning through them very quickly with anxious energy.
Well done for doing it. It's one of those things where you hear, well, you telling me that story just kind of brings me up in hives just imagining it. It's that exciting, like, I can't imagine anyone getting that phone call, that email and saying, no, I'm not doing that. Everyone would want to do it, but actually doing it is a different thing. And going through with it takes a lot of confidence. Good for you for actually doing that.
Yeah, it was kind of like, well, this is okay. This is going to be a make or break. When they pitched the first scenario, the what if, and they said, okay, well, what would you do? So I gave him a plan and suggested this is what I would do. And he said that it's a green light. I literally cried. Like I sat here and I ugly cried. And because this is very real. Because you don't think that what you're doing is good enough. And then when you finally get an opportunity like that, it becomes so validating in a way that you never have been. Yeah. So that was a pretty big moment.
You're definitely on the right path. And if anyone deserves it, it's you. I genuinely think that. You have a natural, almost effortless demeanour on camera. Due to this, have you been involved in voice acting in other realms? And have you ever thought of pursuing acting?
Voice acting, no. Acting, yes. And I have acted. So yes. I worked on some really low budget independent films, some pretty embarrassing independent films. One was for the Baba Booey film, like Howard Stern Film Festival. Yeah, so it was, that was, yeah. Not my best work. Yeah, and then I'd worked on some other films, local independent films here in New England, including a low budget vampire movie. That was a lot of late hours in abandoned buildings.
Many people will know you from the highly successful Fallout for Hope charity streams. What prompted you to create Fallout for Hope, and how did you get so many creators and Bethesda themselves involved?
Fallout for Hope started after early last year. Because this community is so small, we all kind of know each other. And one of the people that's pretty well known is Doc C.J. Martin, who role plays as a West Virginia doctor. Even during year one, he'd be out there role playing as a doc. He'd be out there giving out stim packs at the Queen fights and, taking care of people's wounds and that kind of thing. So he became pretty well known in the community for that and for his clinics. We got word that he was really hurt bad getting his family out of a house fire. His trailer had caught fire. So he got his family out, and in that process, the plastic awning liquefied and he collapsed in on him. So he had like third-degree burns all over himself. We were going to send flowers, and I thought, this is not what they need. So on an off chance, I started a GoFundMe, and that blew up pretty quickly. Like the press were contacting me, Polygon, Kotaku. It went worldwide in a week, with donations pouring in from players in Japan. Bethesda employees donated. He was pretty beside himself. And because of this community, not only were they able to replace what they lost, but they ended up repairing the trailer and fixing the home so they could stay in it. So on top of all of that, it helped them in a very real way. And that really struck me, that the community mobilized and came together like that so quickly.
That must have been such a moment for you to sit back and say, my God, like I'm so happy that I was able to help these people, because I know everyone, other people around the world supported this and donated money, but you started that.
I was more proud and in awe of the community than I was necessarily about me, because I didn't. It surprised me how quickly it blew up. Part of what I believe, when I first started doing this, I talked to other content creators, and even when we started doing charity and things like that, getting a no or just not being responded to at all is pretty hard, particularly if you know what you're doing, much less look up to someone. I always try, and anybody who writes me or asks for advice or just wants to talk, I will respond.
Like me.
Yeah, I will respond to anybody and everybody. And I don't ever want that to change. And when it comes to charity, I believe that every content creator is borrowing a platform. Because I think if you can, and you have the time and you have the voice and the platform, you should.
During your time as a creator, have you had any positive moments that really impacted you or changed the way you approach things?
When the show really started getting recognized by Bethesda, that was definitely a very positive thing. And partly, really validated what we were doing, but also made me want to do better and tell even bigger stories. And part of it was the fun in that, like Pete Hines' character that he does, the judge, he enjoyed doing it and wanted to do more of it. So, we keep writing him. And I think it's something he started to enjoy, but it also gives the team something fun to do. And I enjoy being able to give them that kind of experience where it's something that they can step outside of the role a little bit and have fun with the community in a way that's maybe controlled in a sense, something that they can do on their own free time that would still be related, but isn't something that has to be maybe so heavily scripted or vetted, where it's just something where they can play a character and improv and have some fun. Lady Devon, who's a community manager, she's going to be joining the cast this season as Atomic Alice, playing a raider chick. So she's really looking forward to that. Garrett Bowden, she's one of the lead writers for Fallout and does quest design. He's joining the cast as an interesting character called the Archivist. He has a very interesting role to play. Sean Baptiste, who also works with Bethesda, is joining the cast, who's also going to be playing a raider, who's kind of this rockabilly raider. So he's actually going to fight only with, like the guitar sword and the death tambo and things like that.
Other than sleeping, what do you do when you aren't voicing the Chad 76 podcast or raising thousands of dollars with the amazing Fallout for Hope charity streams?
Working. I run a marketing firm, and I work full time for a luxury hair care manufacturer, and that is about it for my free time.
Do you have any favorite YouTube channels or Twitch channels or creators, and they can be gaming or non-gaming, that you'd recommend to watch on YouTube or Twitch?
People that I actually watch on YouTube, so I watch Lone Vault Wanderer. I love watching Tier. He's a good friend. He's helped me several times fixing my builds because that's not my strong suit. Juicehead is also good people. I've been watching him for longer before we started having him on our other show, the Fallout Hub, and got to know him a little bit. At Bethesda Game Days, actually, we hung out most of the evening. Call Me Kevin, I actually really like. He's just hilarious. I've been watching him for a while. Alpha Beta Games, I really enjoy. They do gameplay of some really weird independent games. They're games that you wouldn't see anywhere else. So they're very artistic and outside the norm, and I love seeing that kind of randomness from the community. I also watch like Kova Camps, other creators like Swiftkick, Kazamati. A Swiftkick in the early days of Fallout he had his viral video with his Deathclaw camp where he invited people in and then would lock them inside. And there would be a Deathclaw in there. So the Deathclaw would just like attack them. Tonic I watch, of course. Yeah.
Ken, how do you deal with sponsors? Have you ever had any strange requests? And I noticed, is it you're sponsored by Spotify on your podcast?
You are. Yeah, it was offered through Anchor where we host the podcast, and Spotify reaches out and you can choose if you want to be sponsored by them. We have supporters on Patreon, which now the show is self-supporting because there are like between web costs and sound effects licensing and all of that kind of stuff. There's very much a cost to doing each episode. So thanks to the patrons, the show is self-sustaining now, which is great. I also don't, similar to my opinion on YouTube, I don't want this to become a job. And I don't want people to feel like, hey, it's Ken and I'm here again for microwave meals. Boy, I just can't wait to have this microwave salmon and pesto ravioli. No one believes that shit. It's not authentic. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. So, strange request. Last month, I was contacted by someone who said, I work for this company and we're reaching out for influencers and we would like to pay you to do a spot for Smooth Balls. Like, I read it a few times and I was like, is this one? I was thinking, is this a troll? Or two, like, is this a scam? So I look up the company. It's exactly what you think it would be. And I was thinking to myself, like, what? Like how creepy a commercial is that? Like if you're sitting at home, I'm going to do this ASMR. Hey, everybody. This is Kenneth Vigue. If you're out there in the wasteland with dirty underwear that you've had on for 3 years, a little product I love called Smooth Balls. Boy, my tackle box has never felt like a tarmac, but this Smooth Balls offers a variety of options. Keep your undercarriage crystal clean, if you know what I'm saying. I hope to see you in the wasteland, and don't forget to use my special hashtag, FChad. Smooth Balls. This is Kenneth Vigue. And I love Smooth Balls. It's like,
balls. Oh, that is so going in the bloopers. I might just keep it in the main one. God.
Like,
yeah, how would you get that? How'd you even drop that in there?
At first, I was like, "Wow, this is a great moment. I'm being approached by people like out of the blue for sponsorships." Of course, I said no. I felt less special when my friend Renee, who streams on Wreck-It Renee, who's obviously a female, I was also contacted by Smooth Balls. The best part, because I was so like, you have to do this. So Renee said yes. So she, in a Santa beard, to look like a man, is going to do a spot for Smooth Balls. And I'm going to laugh. It's going to be excellent.
Okay, so what are you most excited about regarding the Fallout 76 roadmap, especially now Microsoft have bought Bethesda?
Expeditions. I'm ready to crawl out of Appalachia. It's been 3 years now and I've crawled over every inch of it and I'm ready to check out some new spaces.
You are fast approaching 10,000 subs. So how does it feel to be so close to that epic milestone?
It's an exciting milestone for me, but also not my primary platform. Like I cared more about when we passed like 300,000 listens and download. Keep meaning to add it back up and see where we're at now. But when we get to 500,000, we're probably going to have a little party. That's kind of a big number. Like we're heard in 107 countries now, which is just baffling. And shout out to the 15 people in Bosnia-Herzegovina that listens to me.
What advice would you give to anyone dreaming of starting a YouTube channel or starting out on Twitch, or even starting a podcast, actually, because I've not really mentioned that much, and that's my fault. But yeah, what advice would you give to people starting out on social?
Like I think I can give better advice maybe on podcasting than YouTube. When it comes to to doing a Fallout podcast. And if anything, I started a writers campfire guild to get more Fallout oriented podcasts going. A number of really amazing shows have come out of that ironically all enough are in the same Chad universe. Going into the end of the season, we're actually going to be doing a Marvel cinematic style crossover. So all of the shows will be converging around a very particular event that happens that threatens everything.
How would people get involved with that? If they wanted to join your guild, could they? Or
yeah. If anyone is a writer who's planning on starting an audio podcast, anyone can DM me and come to the meeting. It's not if you want to work on a podcast, if it's you want to start one, since we all have shows in production. This is more to help people figure out, like, how do I even get started on a platform? What software do I use? How do I find voice actors? Like that kind of stuff.
Okay, so final question. If you could pick 3 dinner guests, past or present, famous or not, to join you for dinner, who would they be and why?
I think Todd Howard would have to be one, because I hope to meet him one day. Bill Bryson would be another. He is both smart and hilarious. And I love those traits in people. I think he would be amazing. Third person, that's a tough one, because if we go historically speaking, I'm just thinking about what would make who would make really good dinner conversation and who would vibe together.
Yeah, you got Todd Howard, who's kind of quiet, doesn't really say much, but then when he does speak, he's got something to say.
He's quiet, but he's got a little twinkle in his eye. I think he appreciates a little bit of quirky madness. So I think he would get along well with Bill Bryson. Edward Gorey would be an interesting third one. Edward Gorey was an ink and pen author and someone I loved from when I was a kid. He did ink and pen drawings for the John Belair's young adult Gothic horror books, which were a big part of my childhood. I have first editions of all of them at this point. Brilliantly written, but he was a local author, John Belair's, in Haverhill, Massachusetts, near where I grew up. And Edward Gorey did the most amazing ink and pen drawings. He was a really interesting figure anyway, as far as being an artist and world traveler. So I think he would have some hilarious stories to tell about life.
And you get to tell him about how much you looked up to him as a child, which should be.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me. But yeah, before we go, just I like to talk, I like to give my guests the last word. So is there anything you would like to say to the people watching, the fans of your subscribers, and anyone that's new to you as a podcaster, charity guru, genuine awesome dude? Yeah, what would you like to say?
Well, we hope that you'll tune in or want to stream with us in December for Fallout for Hope for St. Jude, which we have been working very hard since February. We started planning for this December. St. Jude is working with us directly this time. We have some massive, massive plans. That'll be kicking off December 4th, 2 weeks. And we have a big, hairy, audacious goal from a fundraising standpoint that I think we can smash. So if you want to stream with us or just tune in, we'd love to see you then.
If you reach the end of episode 2, then you're a legend. Leave a comment, dogmate, below to prove that you are a true legend that doesn't have the attention span of a gnat. Yeah. It's been an absolute honor to interview Kenneth Vigue of Chad, a Fallout 76 podcast. He is an absolute gentleman. He's amazing. I really did enjoy this episode. It's 3 a.m. We spoke for so long. So, I really hope you enjoyed it. If you want to stay tuned for more and you haven't subscribed, then subscribe. You'll get notified of future episodes, which they'll be coming out every fortnight. And I'll also have some other content coming soon. So I've got some foxes making sweet love in my garden, so I'm going to go. Other than that, like I said, subscribe if you haven't. Leave a like if you liked it, and comment below if you've got any suggestions or changes or whatever. I don't know, just have a little chat down below. And like I say, if you're a true pro and you made it all the way through, probably didn't, don't worry, I'm not going to judge you. But dog me in the comments. I'm CTZNGiRL, I'm delirious. But it doesn't matter because it's all about making that sweet, sweet content.